we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Northrup.
And I know we give you a lot of bad news on this show, but we will also give you some good stuff. New York State responded to the rogue Supreme Court by protecting abortion rights, gun control, and advancing an equality amendment that protects women and LGBTQ people.
So you can all feel free to move to New York immediately. We need you. But the other good news, Ketanji Brown Jackson was seated on the Supreme Court, bent on limiting LGBTQ rights and oversight of elections. But she'll be a nice, fresh face there.
President Biden has been hit for the deal he made with Mitch McConnell to appoint an anti-abortion federal judge from Kentucky.
Yeah, wait till you hear this if you haven't already. And also in Kentucky, the out gay teacher of the year is quitting over homophobia.
Florida is censoring schools on LGBTQ issues, as we've told you, but they're also pushing a Christian indoctrination program for the public schools. Unbelievable,
but true. A Polish court has abolished the 4 LGBT-free zones that were created in Poland.
London Pride has marked its 50th anniversary, and it was the largest ever.
Brittany Griner appealed to President Biden to release her from her Russian captors, and there's a little more communication among them today.
A Nigerian Sharia court has sentenced 3 men to death by stoning for homosexual acts.
And there was another case of that happening nearby, not so nearby. The push is on to get the U.S. to release its monkeypox vaccines being stored in Denmark, although I'm not sure they have enough of any of it to...
Monkeypox, you don't want it.
No, you don't.
I know it can be hard to avoid, especially if you're sexually active, but it's tough. Anyway,
yeah, but come on, let's get smart about this. You don't want it, and you should be avoiding it.
Absolutely, or getting a vaccine when they are available, and be pushing your local health department to acquire them. But we start with the Supreme Court
and the manufacture of them, because there aren't enough of it.
Right. We start with the Supreme Court and the fact that this week they added Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first Black woman justice. There she is with Justice Stephen Breyer swearing her in, and her husband, Mr. Jackson. She joins a 6-3 radical right court. In addition to the carnage that we spoke of last week, they gutted the EPA this week and said they can't basically enforce the Clean Air and Power Act. They want to just empower all federal agencies. They don't care about climate catastrophe, and they defer to the Congress, and they say, let Congress do. Congress has to do it when Congress can't do anything.
Well, one wonders whether they recognize that there is a U.S. Constitution and that it has some basic values that have been the basis of all these decisions that they're striking down. Now, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the picture we showed you there was her second swearing in. She was originally sworn in, of course, by Chief Justice Roberts, but then she was sworn in with the judiciary oath or something. I may be screwing that up. By Stephen Breyer, who was her former boss and mentor. And I just thought it was really nice to be acknowledging Stephen Breyer as he leaves the court, because in fact, he has been our great friend there, one of them. And so I like the intersection of those two, him handing it off to her. But unfortunately, at a moment when she's stymied.
Well, as you probably may have heard, but you should know, the court has teed up an election case, Moore versus Harpel from North Carolina, for the coming term, where they're going to try to invoke this independent state legislative doctrine. And this would mean that it's about a redistricting case, but this would mean that state legislatures would have no oversight from a governor who might be Democrat, from a Supreme Court of their own state who just might be fair, that the legislature could just do what it wants. And of course, if the Supreme Court goes that way and the red state legislatures get a control of all these things, if they had that control before, Trump would be president now.
It's just getting worse and worse, and one wonders what kind of country we're headed for. And, it doesn't help when Joe Biden is willing to make a deal with Mitch McConnell to let Mitch McConnell appoint a horrendously right-wing, anti-abortion federal judge in exchange for Biden being able to appoint a couple of state attorney or federal attorneys.
Federal prosecutors.
Yeah. And who have, limited terms and can be fired by the next president. But Mitch McConnell is going to get to put into office for a life term a horrible judge. And these horrible...
This guy is Chad Merritt.
They're lining up across the country and multiplying, and they're doing real damage to us everywhere.
Well, everybody, the Democratic governor of Kentucky is horrified. Andy Beshear. Charles Booker, who's the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate versus Rand Paul, said the president is making a deal with the devil.
Well, we know that.
Well,
so that's not good news.
But, look, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is calling on Congress, and we really got to get serious about this because we don't have much time to codify rights to abortion, contraception, marriage equality for same-sex couples, and interracial marriage. And you got to have to bypass the filibuster to do that. Now, there are all kinds of calls for this, but seriously, folks, I hope that these holdouts about the filibuster look at this and say, this is maybe our last chance. We've got
they can't even get a vote to set aside the filibuster just to enshrine abortion rights. I don't know who's against that, but I think that whether it's Manchin and Sinema or whomever, do not want to override the filibuster, even for a limited item, under any circumstances.
Well, our legal groups, four of our five big legal groups are calling for the expansion of the Supreme Court. Now, this can be done by the Congress. It's not going to be done by this Congress, but it is something that is necessary if we're going to diffuse some of the tension in this country.
Well, none of this is going to happen unless people come out and vote more Democrats into office in November. And to think that we can overcome the current obstacles is, at this point, I think, is just dreaming.
Well, the news was that also that Biden finally came out for lifting the filibuster.
Oh boy!
Well, just saying, it's a step, and it's part of the conversation.
I don't think it's a step. I think he should do that, but I think he should have done it a year ago, and I think it's not going to have any effect.
Well, anti-abortion.
What mind is he going to change?
Anti-abortion groups like the Thomas More Society are now drafting legislation to let private citizens sue anyone who helps a resident of a state that has barred abortion from terminating a pregnancy outside of their state. The very thing that Justice Kavanaugh said would not happen. The Biden administration said such laws would violate the Interstate Commerce Clause. But what's next? You go out, you cross the river for a drink, and you can get prosecuted. Come on.
Well, what's next is if the Republicans take over the Senate and the House, they will do whatever they want. Biden can veto stuff until they elect a Republican president in 2024. But this is all headed for a big, huge crash.
So elected prosecutors around the country have vowed not to prosecute anyone for abortion. In a joint statement, they said criminalizing and prosecuting individuals who seek or provide abortion care makes a mockery of justice.
Well, great. Well, they're still in office, but how long is that going to last?
Okay. The technology.
I hate to be the doomsayer here, but things are in terrible shape. And
Well, yes. I mean, Ken Paxton of Texas just said, he was asked about, you're going to try to reinstate the sodomy law in Texas, and he's definitely open to that.
yes,
As a matter of public health, he said.
yeah, public health. Well, we keep circulating monkeypox stories. He's going to use that in court. He
What
said
can we
he
do?
will defend. He'd be happy to go to the Supreme Court to defend the reinstitution of the.
Also in Texas, the state high court there let a 1925 abortion ban go into effect. They dug it up. What is it? Yeah. Paxton, the one we're talking about, the attorney general there, says he's looking into fining corporations $100,000 if they pay for their employees to travel out of state to get an abortion. And then,
And yet our senators will not put aside the filibuster to codify Roe.
Our senators from New York would, but not from Sinema and Manchin.
But here's what Biden's up to. He's giving the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Megan Rapinoe. Fine, great. And he finally had a conversation with Brittany Griner's wife, Cheryl, and is going to write a letter to Brittany after she wrote him a letter saying, I'm terrified I might be here forever in Russia.
In the abortion thing, and it is putting a lot of Republicans on the spot. There's the case of the 10-year-old girl who was found at a child abuse center to be pregnant, 6 weeks and 3 days, too late for Ohio for abortion. They sent her to Indianapolis, where she was had it terminated. They really tie themselves into knots when they have to answer this question, but they all end up saying it's a tragedy, but we don't want to compound it with another tragedy. Well.
The governor of South Dakota said a 10-year-old who's pregnant should give birth. Kristi Noem.
To a rapist.
Yeah, a very likely candidate for president or vice president in a couple of years. And she got in under the wire in Indiana because they're about to reinstitute a ban on abortion.
47 House Republicans are pushing to declare June not Pride Month, but Month of Life to celebrate the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade. Is also an effort to provide, that's what they're trying to do to us.
5 Democrats in the House of Representatives introduced a new gender identity and expression non-discrimination law that would mandate access to medical care, no forced surgery for people who are intersex, ban conversion therapy. But, they may pass that in the House. They're not going to pass it in the Senate. But thank you to Congress members Jayapal Cicilline, Takano, Richie Torres, and Marie Newman, who has already lost her primary for re-election to the House.
You've probably seen some of the coverage of the kinds of phone calls that Adam Kinzinger, the Republican anti-Trump guy on the January 6th committee, has been getting. And they've been playing them on the air, although we couldn't do it here completely. Violent phone messages he gets at his office, mostly reviewed by his young interns. But they're not saying is they are rife with homophobia. I mean, it's all anti-gay epithets, sexist language, F words, of course, threatening to kill him, his wife, his mother, and his son. I do not want to be in union with such people.
Well, it's a longstanding tradition that people are a lot braver making anonymous phone calls than they are acting out. I don't think the guy in Illinois or any of these other serial killers or mass murderers were making a lot of threatening calls. They just went out and did it.
Are you kidding? I got to see some of his videos before they took them down. I put them up before as soon as they announced his name, it was right there. He had them up for 8 months, where he was shooting at people. Anyway, All right. In sort of better news, Title IX regulations from the United States Department of Education, the proposal that they put out there expands protections for transgender students in colleges, but they've delayed rulemaking for sports since they say, well, the standards for that are evolving in real time. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona said.
And people, same-sex couples who are married are beginning to look at what they have to do to legalize their relationships and their status in the face of the underpinnings potentially being knocked out from under them by the Supreme Court Roe decision. So they are beginning to investigate ways to put together wills, second parent adoptions, medical directives. If you are a same-sex couple, you might want to pay serious attention to this. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it's certainly on the horizon as a possibility that your legal relationship will no longer be legal.
I mean, the interesting thing was that in California, when they passed Prop 8, they didn't unmarry the gay couples that were already married. They were still recognized as married in California. But of course, if the Supreme Court overturns the marriage rulings, you would be married in New York, and when you travel across the country, they would have the right not to recognize your marriage in the states where they don't recognize it.
And the Prop 8 days are looking like, nursery school compared to what's going on now. So this relentless right wing is not going to be so easy on already married couples. They're going to find a way to end that. California
Didn't bother to get Prop 8 out of its constitution after the marriage rulings, after they won. They just said, oh, we can get married now. So LGBT leaders had a big meeting, and they have decided, let's not go for it this year. Let's wait till 2024 when everybody's going to the polls. The polling says it would be very different now from a loss back then, which was not all that wide a loss in 2008. They say the immediate focus in California has to be reproductive rights. And Governor Gavin Newsom signed the repeal of the walking while trans law in California, which penalized you for loitering, ostensibly for the purpose of sex work, although even if you're just walking while trans, you got arrested. And so that's out. New York got rid of ours last year. So this is not legalization of sex work, but it does rob police of a cudgel.
They can't just pick up people on the street arbitrarily. They have to actually have evidence of some crime. But on July 1st, anti-LGBT laws took effect in 10 states across the country, dealing with rules about schools and sports, medical care. And maybe one of the most heinous is, of course, the Florida Don't Say Gay law. And what you mentioned in the headlines, this new curriculum they are imposing that is all Christian nationalist based.
Well, all right. So this Christian stuff is part of a training on civics that you don't have to take if you're a teacher, but they'll pay you $700 if you do, and you are entered into a lottery for a $3,000 prize. So a lot of teachers go, but it's just, what does it do? It says it is a misconception that the founders desired the strict separation of church and state. It also says that slave-owning presidents of Jefferson and Washington were anti-slavery. And DeSantis says they're now learning the real facts, an idiot phrase if I ever heard one.
Are they going to teach about the gay presidents?
Yeah. Well, actually, Buchanan, who was the most likely to have been homosexual, was just rated the lowest by historians, even beyond Trump.
Yeah, but there are a lot more than him who we have evidence about. And you mentioned Trump, so I'm going to use that as an excuse to correct something I said last week. I've gotten a little muddied about that. When Trump was in office, there were people doing a lot of demonstrations with a lot of signs that looked a lot a lot alike, black and white signs. In fact, there's someone you might recognize in this first picture holding one of these signs. Who's that guy on the left? Well, on the right is Lori Arbiter. So Trump said, I've been mangling this. What Trump said was, look at those signs. They're very professional. Those weren't made in someone's basement. Those are financed by George Soros.
Oh, God.
Well, in fact, Lori Arbiter has been making them. That's in a friend's printing shop, which might as well be her basement, same kind of thing. And she's been doing this for several years now. She's a complete heroine. And I just wanted to set the record straight because I had screwed that up. Thank you, Lori, for all your work.
She should teach sign making classes to the nation. Maybe make a video. You know,
it's easier than you think, and you don't need George Soros's money. No, Mr. Trump, it's not a plot. It's just us.
Well, I want to go back to Florida for a second. Leon County there, now under the Don't Say Gay law, they're requiring the notification of parents, all parents, not just your parents, all parents, if a child is open about their gender identity and they're going to go on a trip, so that parents of cisgender children can say, I don't want to, them, having a bunk with them or whatever, and that kind of stuff. Wow.
It gets worse every day. They are literally trying to isolate us, erase us, make us invisible, make us lock us up, do whatever they want. Well, they just want us out.
After the Highland Park thing, they're going to blame, the killing on cross-dressing. This is a guy who, cross-dressed to try to escape. You see, he was not a cross-dresser per se.
They're very careful about saying that, but you're right. The message may not be getting through to all of the public.
But I actually have done a thorough investigation of the Highland Park case, and the source of the catastrophe was the availability of weapons of war to anybody, basically, and 315 mass shootings just this year.
Well, availability, as you say, he was making all those threats online. They'd called the cops on him, who came and took all his knives, which his father went and got the next day at the police station, saying those were my knives, give them back, and then signed a permission slip for the son to get the rifles.
Well, let's see. In Wyoming,
no red flag law. That we need a system where at least if someone has the police come to their house and confiscate their knives because they've been threatening to kill everyone, that perhaps they should end up on a list where they are not allowed to buy weapons.
But the thing is, we just can't have these guns. The only countries that have conquered mass shootings are the ones that have just banned these kinds of weapons.
Yes.
And again, you can say that's just never going to happen here, but I'd like to live in a nation that does. In Wyoming, the superintendent of public
instruction. We'll get you a list.
Well, we are trading notes online. In Wyoming, the superintendent of public instruction is prepared to forego $40 million in federal funding for school lunches if the alternative is to accept new non-discrimination policies required by the Department of Agriculture, requiring them to investigate allegations of discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And they would also have to update their policies to prohibit such discrimination. This guy, Brian Schroeder, says he won't comply. We categorically reject gender ideology, which is their new phrase.
In food service?
26 state attorney generals have asked the USDA, Department of Agriculture, to rescind the policy.
I'm telling you, it's all going downhill.
Except in New York. Let's go there.
Okay.
Can we give them a little good news?
Sure.
All right. So with all the bad Supreme Court decisions, New York State passed bills to limit the carry of concealed weapons, excluding them from sensitive areas, museums, public transport, airports, courts, keep a record here, daycare, anywhere the children gather, schools, shelters, entertainment venues, any place that serves alcohol, government buildings, houses of worship, libraries, polling places, health facilities, public demonstrations and rallies, and all of Times Square. So keep that in mind when you are concealing carry. Anyway, New York State also passed the Equality Amendment. And by the way, also on the guns, lots more oversight of the people applying for the guns. They have to go through training programs, and much more oversight. We also, now again, this has been pending for a long time. The legislature passed an Equality Amendment. Now, that used to be the Equal Rights Amendment, which the voters did not pass in the 70s when it went to them. But this would be much more extensive. It adds new classes to the existing equal protections in our state constitution, which is just race, color, creed, or religion. And then they added ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, or sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. It passed the Senate 49-14, Assembly 98-43, has to pass a new legislature, and it could be on the ballot in 2023 or 2024.
And a lot of this was pushed by Alyssa Crespo, who's the head of the new Pride Agenda, which is the new statewide LGBT organization. And we have a little video of her talking about this.
My name is Elisa Crespo. I'm the executive director of the New Pride Agenda. We are an LGBTQ education and advocacy organization that is run by Black and brown, trans and gender nonconforming people. And I thank you for inviting me here to speak today about the intersectionality of this issue. I think we all understand the urgency of now. We all understand why we are standing here today. We all understand that our values as Americans, our principles are on the line. They are hanging in the balance right now as we speak. We have got to come together and unite behind our intersectional struggle, because the fact of the matter is our rights are under attack, friends. Rights that impact each and every single one of us. Our bodily autonomy is under attack, from a person's right to choose to have a safe abortion to trans youth seeking life-saving, gender-affirming care. All of it is under attack by the same group of people who have the same collective agenda, and some of them are at the highest levels of government.
It's nice to see a powerful speech like that in Albany at the state capitol, and they did go through the first stage of passing this constitutional amendment.
And the governor signed 3 climate-related bills. Of course, New York can't solve the climate crisis alone, but again, this is urging everyone in their states, even in red states where you have hard legislatures, you've got to start getting out there and making the case and educating people.
Well, here's what you're up against in Alabama. The attorney general there is arguing that the Supreme Court decision on Roe is legitimate because that is not deeply rooted in the nation's history. Of course, abortion was legal before it was illegal in this country. And the Attorney General says that this decision will allow criminalization of trans medical care in Alabama. Criminalization.
Well, that's why we've got to be involved in elections, even though we're up against it. The Victory Fund said in the primaries last week in Colorado, Illinois, New York, and Oklahoma, 71% of their candidates won, 50% of non-incumbents, and nearly all the incumbents. And in Illinois, Eric Sorensen, we have a picture of him, won his primary, and he's on track to be the first out LGBTQ person elected to Congress from the state of Illinois. He's a former meteorologist at WREX in Rockford. And
well, maybe he can convince Congress to do something about climate change.
He touts his science background.
And it is good news that Victory Fund candidates are winning these races. And as we've just spent the first half of the show with all the doom and gloom news, there is good news like that. And it is possible for us to win the midterms and hold back this onslaught, this tsunami of hate and disappearance, but we have to get out there and vote.
Especially in the Senate, which is our best hope of holding on to any power. In New York,
Well, we better hold the House too.
well, that's a harder lift, but let's try.
Yes, let's do it.
Ann and I will be getting a new out Assembly member, Tony Simone, who joins out Deborah Glick to our south and Danny O'Donnell on the Upper West Side. HRC, by the way, has endorsed 184 U.S. House incumbents who support the Federal Equality Act for re-election. The House has passed that bill. You can go to hrc.org and see who they are. All are Democrats from what is ostensibly a nonpartisan organization. And in our own district, Ann and I are going to have to choose between Carolyn Maloney and Jerry Nadler.
Well, there's not a terrible
And
choice.
Suraj Patel.
Well, here's another piece of optimistic news. There is new data from one of the Census Bureau's surveys, the Household Pulse Survey. They do periodic other surveys in addition to the every 10-year formal census. And they have found that the LGBT self-reported population, state by state, ranges from a high of 12.3% of people in Oregon to 5% in Mississippi and South Dakota. Those are the lowest. And I think when 5% of the population of Mississippi and South Dakota are reporting themselves as LGBT, that's a pretty good step. In California, for instance, 9.1% of the population of California reports itself as LGBT. Men are more likely to report themselves as gay. Women are more likely to report themselves as bisexual, and in sort of reverse orders. But all of these are numbers that are growing. And to us, that doesn't mean the population is growing. It means the out population is growing, which will then become the more politically active population.
And also the understanding that young people come to earlier and earlier about who they are.
Yeah, I remember years ago when we were talking about, oh my God, teenagers are coming out.
I was on jury duty and I worked at Hetrick Martin with Ann for gay youth. I said I work with gay and lesbian youth. I work with gay youth and gay kids. And the lawyer goes, "What's a gay kid?"
A goat.
All right. Okay. Well, speaking of kids and trying to help kids, but in Mount Sterling, Kentucky, Willie Carver Jr., who was the state teacher of the year for 2022, is giving up teaching French and English after 12 years at Montgomery County High School in Mount Sterling because of Trump, inspired homophobia and threats from Republican politicians, not to mention David Mamet. Carver saw a music teacher, Tyler Morgan, receive horrific death threats from parents upset by his talking about LGBTQ acceptance. Administrators said Morgan's actions were unacceptable and won't be tolerated. So Carver said he feels it's unsafe to return to the classroom. He's taking an administrative job at the University of Kentucky, but fears for LGBTQ students. Administrators at the high school also told him not to cover anything racial in his lessons, but anti-LGBTQ and racist slurs are going unpunished.
We have a long way to go. But we're thankful to Karina Dickey in Iowa, who is an out bisexual young woman. She has disowned her father, who is a Republican state senator. There she is doing that. She says he's abusive and a bigot. And so she wants nothing more to do with him.
She said, when he was elected, I was told to keep my mouth shut. And she did in hopes that he had changed, but he has not. The father says he loves her and that many of the things she says are untrue, but he won't say what.
He loves her even though she's an out bisexual?
Well,
Perhaps
he votes anti-LGBTQ, and she's had it.
Yeah.
Where are we going? Numbers.
We're going to the Proud Boys in Woodland, California and South Bend, Indiana. Okay. In Woodland, California, the Proud Boys, who have a whole new agenda, invaded a drag show at a bar, a family-friendly, age-appropriate drag bar. And you see those cops there? They're standing by while the Proud Boys enter the bar to abuse everyone in there at the drag show.
Well, the drag show had actually been canceled, hadn't it? I think because of the threats. But these guys were still trying to bust into the bar. The cops were standing so close to the action that they were eating pepper spray by the security guards. The security guards were trying to keep them at bay.
And in South Bend, Indiana, Proud Boys, using white supremacist hand signals, invaded Rainbow Family Storytime, which ended up being canceled, but the library, I guess, where it was, says they will reschedule it.
This is what they get from Fox News. And of course, it does result in deaths in some cases. We have a horrible
Well, I just want to point out that the January 6th committee is having its next hearing next Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. And it's going to be a lot about the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and how they all got organized to come invade the Capitol and who sent them there.
The brown shirts.
Yeah.
All right. In Daytona Beach, Telon Man, 19 years old, shot dead by Jakari Webb, 19, on June 23rd. He was apprehended 5 days later, charged with first-degree murder. Webb said he feared that Mann was going to post something on a social media that he is gay. They had been talking on social media since February, and the murder took place at what was to be their first in-person meeting, and he goes ahead and kills her.
And in Memphis, Tennessee, trans woman Kitty Monroe was shot dead at home by her ex. Vicious murder, and that's just another.
Well, the perpetrator in that case says they were struggling and the gun went off, but that's the defense. But you know, and then kind of a bad guy at the Metropolitan Opera, a famous opera singer, Renee Pape, a German, long with the company. He was so appalled by the Met's celebration of LGBTQ pride that he told his colleagues on Facebook that he's quitting after 35 years. And a lot of them are not sorry to see him go.
Well, his threatening tweet was deleted. So there's some question about whether this was bluster on his part or a real threat to quit. But given his statements, he may not have a choice about quitting. But it's a story in progress. We'll pay attention and let you know what happens.
And what's going on Alaska Airlines, Anne?
Well, this is the sweet story of the week. So it turns out that a flight attendant on Alaska Airlines proposed marriage to her pilot girlfriend. And as Andy said to me, who's flying the plane?
Well, the passengers don't seem too concerned.
Well, someone else is flying the plane. They were both on the plane on a vacation or something. That's the flight attendant on the left and the pilot on the right. They've been going together for a couple of years. So the flight attendant in the blue dress gets on the PA system and announces to the whole plane the whole story. You know, my girlfriend is the pilot. We've been going out. I love her very much. And the pilot, she has the pilot standing there and turns to her, gets down on one knee, produces a ring and proposes to her. And the pilot says yes, and everybody cheers, and, you know, champagne and confetti, rainbow fans being waved by other flight attendants. It's all a big celebration. And the passengers on the Alaska Airlines plane were each given a ticket for a future free flight.
Wow. They should make a Hallmark film out of it.
Well, I'm sure they will. But that's our good news story of the week. All right.
International?
Yes.
More good news. Poland, a court abolished 4 LGBT free zones. citing the European Union Treaty. The zones were established in 2019 in a wave of homophobia, banning the promotion of homosexuality or gender identity, especially in schools. Previously, a lower court had ruled against 9 such local resolutions.
Poland is a little afraid of losing European Union funding. It has occurred to them that they're getting punished for this kind of thing, so they are skedaddling in the other direction.
And Spain, the cabinet approved a bill that, if backed by Parliament, will allow people as young as 16 to change their gender identity, and those as young as 12 to do so with a judge's authorization. The Equality Minister, Irene Montero, said, "Today we again place ourselves in the vanguard of LGBTQ rights."
Well, that would be nice. And a bank in the UK, Halifax Bank, fought back when they received complaints from some customers because they told their employees that they could put their pronouns on their name tags. And a few customers said, "What?" That's a direct quote.
They're watching too much Fox News.
The bank said, "You're welcome to take your business elsewhere. We value our employees, and if they want to put their pronouns on their name tags, that's absolutely fine with us."
Right. Okay, well, let's stay in the UK. In London, they had the 50th anniversary of Pride, the biggest one ever. And the first one was a couple hundred people, and there were some of the veterans of that there. A bunch of all those people were at the first one 50 years ago. This one had 1 million people. There were no uniform law enforcement in it. It marched on the original route to Trafalgar Square. Also marching was the African Equality Foundation protesting homophobic laws in most Commonwealth nations. Boris Johnson didn't march, but the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, did, as did the mayor, Sadiq Khan. And so that, they had a couple of bigots on the side of the road who were protesting, and they ran into the cast of that Netflix Heartstoppers. So there they are, the kids from Heartstoppers, giving the finger and dancing around. While
Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
Now, it was less corporate and less policed, with the approval of the London mayor, who said he was sensitive to people's legitimate concerns about policing, and approved the idea of cops not marching in uniform, which it'd be nice if mayors elsewhere, like here in New York, agreed with that.
Well, actually, Adams, I think, did show up for the Pride Parade.
But he was against. He railed against the idea of not allowing cops to march.
As did de Blasio.
Exactly my point.
Right.
But there were
and London Breed out in San Francisco.
Exactly. Again, I am praising the London mayor.
I'm saying
differently.
He nevertheless marched with the parade that is exclusionary.
Yes.
Okay.
So there were 600 plus community groups in the London march, and a group called Lesbians and Gays Support the Migrants did a die-in in the midst of the march that stopped it for 23 minutes in honor of 23 people who have died in police custody in the last year and a half.
Well, that's because, Boris Johnson, who will likely be out of power by the time many of you see this, is shipping, migrants off to Rwanda, trying to be processed and forgotten, basically. And
exactly.
I hope that policy changes.
So these protesters were bringing a little more politics to the parade, which was a good thing. Now, very bravely and positively in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, they held their third Pride Parade, and the first one that was peaceful without attacks from either the police or protesters. There were a lot of families there. And that was a very successful event, and that's progress. Also progress in Switzerland, where they legalized marriage recently, And the first couples, same-sex couples, actually got married this week.
Horrible news from Nigeria. 3 men were convicted of engaging in homosexual acts. They've been sentenced to death by stoning by an Islamic Sharia court in the northern state of, how do you say this, Bauchi? Bauchi. They were arrested on June 14th, including a 70-year-old man. They all allegedly confessed, but you can't trust that. They can appeal within 30 days. Now, the nationwide law is not as strict. It punishes homosexual acts with 14 years in prison. But this religious court can impose death penalties, but then they have to be approved by the state's governor. Activists are calling on Biden to sanction Nigeria over this.
And in protest, famous Nigerian actor Uche Madua, I can't pronounce it, Maduagwu, yeah, I think that's it, came out. And there he is posting on Instagram his statement, "I was born gay, I am still gay, and will forever remain gay. The government cannot tell us how to live our lives in Nigeria. What is happening in the north, especially Bauchi, is so unfair and wrong. No single pastor speaks out against Sharia, erroneous, undemocratic laws. Why?" And that's very brave of him to come out. And also in Iran, they have just executed their third, evidently, gay man this year. Again, a 20-minute trial, no evidence, just they drag you into court, they declare you guilty, and haul you off for execution.
Well, shifting back to the United Kingdom, the Welsh Olympic swimmer Dan Jervis, 26 years old, has come out as gay. In the 2014 and 18 Olympics, he won silver and bronze, respectively, in the 1,500-meter freestyle, also on Team Great Britain in Tokyo, but placed 5th. Says he didn't tell anyone else that he was gay until he was 24 years old. He finally thought to himself, just be you, and said he used to hate who he was. He's been a devout Christian, which didn't make it easy to come out, a Baptist church where his father is a deacon, but he still says being a Christian is the most important thing in his life.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if he can
how they accept him.
In the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, the government has forced Amazon to block LGBT products on their website in the UAE. And Amazon, these companies go along with this to keep doing business in these countries. One might ask them to reconsider that. Amazon was kicked out of Seattle Pride for its ongoing donations to Republican candidates. And Amazon trans employees marched with signs condemning anti-trans books that are sold on the Amazon site.
The right-wing attack on drag queen Story Hour has gone international. A men's group formed to protest COVID restrictions, a fascist group, led the charge versus Turtulla Bookstore in Westport, which calls itself an inclusive social space. The bookstore receives...
This is in Ireland. This is in...
Mayo, Ireland. Sorry, I apologize. So they received 60 abusive calls. The owner says the protesters were not from Westport, where they get amazing local support. The protesters photographed those going into the shop, but were quickly outnumbered by a large group of Pride attendees who came to support the event.
And that was the famous drag performer Panty Bliss doing the reading there, the blonde in the blue and white dress. So that
kids are having a great time.
Yes.
And the parents are all smiling, for those of you listening to the podcast.
Because that's a celebrity drag queen doing the reading.
Telling a nice story.
Yeah. Antigua and Barbuda in the Caribbean, the high court there declared their sodomy laws unconstitutional. Imagine a court finding rights in a constitution.
It is formerly the buggery law, a holdover from the British colony days. It was punishable up to 15 years in prison. And just being intimate without intercourse, 5 years in prison. The judge said it conflicted with guarantees in their Constitution of freedom of expression, personal privacy, and protection from discrimination. Thank you, Justice Marissa Robertson. I wish you were on our court.
Well, stay tuned, because our court may take away that right very shortly when they revisit the Lawrence decision and decide that states can criminalize same-sex sexual relations.
But what if we prove to them that John Lawrence went with Alexander Hamilton? So
I don't think it will make any difference.
Deeply rooted in our tradition.
Logic is not the basis of any of these decisions.
I understand that.
The Lithuania Parliament has agreed to consider legalizing civil unions. They rejected them just last year. It's a very Catholic country, but now they have said, okay, we'll take another look at this.
Okay. AIDS news?
Yes.
Monkeypox.
Yes.
James Krellenstein of Prep for All is proud that their activism got the CDC to distribute more monkeypox vaccines, but says Biden's vaccine strategy is too small and slow to protect LGBTQ communities in particular. The U.S. has 1 million doses being held in Denmark with no plan to speed up delivery to the United States. So he's urging us to contact all kinds of people, Global Health Security, FDA Commissioner, and demand that they act now. It's painful.
Is that the old vaccine or the new vaccine?
No, the new one. That's the new one, the good one. We're going to link to a monkeypox article, which was quite chilling to read about what all these gay men, in this case, or bisexual men, are going through with it, to varying degrees. And some of them have gotten over it, but you don't want this.
Some say it's the most painful thing they've ever felt. Here's what to watch for: a bad fever, swollen lymph nodes, headaches, bad headaches and body aches, chills, and exhaustion, and of course lesions. Eventually,
now I'm reading that you can also get it from someone who's asymptomatic but has it.
Well, sure. Why not?
Well, I mean, what you will see when you look at the article and you read about it is, of course, the bumps and the things which can appear all over the body and internally. So again, you don't want this. I think it is more challenging to avoid, in many ways than HIV.
HIV is much harder to get. Much harder.
You can't. I mean, kissing is an issue. So
you don't get HIV from skin to skin contact.
Right. Correct.
And the incubation period of this is 6 to 13 days. So someone could be asymptomatic and be passing it along. So, yeah.
And look, responsible gay men and others are lining up to get these vaccines, but there aren't any appointments available in New York right now. They say they're going to post it, by the way, this afternoon on the health department website. And I'm sure they're going to be, those slots are going to go in no time.
I'm sure they will. And yes, we need every bit of vaccine we can get. And it's terrific that people are lining up for it. So let's make sure they can get the vaccine. And there are treatments. So stay conscious, get tested if you have any thought that you might have it, and be prepared to isolate a little. All right, entertainment news.
Well, Kinky Boots, the hit from Cyndi Lauper and Harvey Fierstein, is headed back to Broadway this summer, starting July 26th off-Broadway at Stage 42 through February 12th. It ran on Broadway for 6 years, won a bunch of Tony Awards and for everybody involved. And speaking of Kinky Boots, Billy Porter, who also won the Tony for that, will be on the Who Do You Think You Are series on NBC July 10th, and it will go into the story of the murder of his great-grandfather in 1923. It's going to be at 7 p.m., 6 p.m. Central Time, and it also includes Zachary Quinto.
Okay, that's Sunday.
Well, at least for Billy Porter, yes.
Yeah, Elliot Page is thrilled with his new passport photo. Can't stop looking at it.
And he's 35, and he refers to the fact that he knew he was a boy as a little kid, 100%, but kept getting told, no, you're not. You can't be that when you're older. And he used to write fake love letters as a child and sign them Jason. Now he's Elliot. Says he's finally getting back to feeling like who I am, and it's so beautiful and extraordinary. And there's grief to it in a way.
We've told you about Maybelle Blair, who came out at age 95, a baseball player in a league of their own, at the premiere of the new Amazon series. Well, she was interviewed by CBS this Sunday morning. One of those. A
bunch of shows, yes.
And she was so charming, we thought we'd show you a little of that.
Baseball league and players like Maybelle Blair.
If it hadn't been for the war, we would have never had our dream.
You were playing boys teams back in the 40s. You guys won.
Well, sure, some of them, yeah.
Amazon is now revisiting their story and exploring subjects not talked about in the 1992 film or in the 1940s.
There was queer girls that were playing baseball, and we had to hide it.
Blair was so moved at the show's premiere, she publicly came out at 95.
I think it's a great opportunity for these young girl ball players to come and realize that they're not alone, and you don't have to hide. I hid for 75, 85 years, and this is actually basically the first time I've ever come out.
That moment went viral. What is that like when you say something and suddenly it's everywhere?
It was amazing. After I said it, I got to thinking about my family, naturally, and I was so worried that I've lost my family. They call me up the next morning and say, Aunt Maybelle, we love you for what you are, and just be yourself and live your life.
Now, truly, in a league of her own.
As long as I can stand, I can swing a bat.
It's never too late, folks. It's never too late.
Evidently not, but please consider doing it sooner.
Yes. By the way, somebody who did it sooner was Trevor. The film of the off-Broadway Trevor the Musical, based on the Academy Award-winning film about a young gay teen, is now streaming on Disney+. We will link to a trailer in our email.
Harvey Milk said you got to give him hope, and I don't feel like we gave him a lot of hope today, but we're hanging in there and we're fighting back, and we want you to too, because that's what we need, all of us fighting back to prevail.
We can do it. We can swing a bat.
Yes, we can.
We're a golf club.
All right. We will see you next week and join us then.
Thanks for being with us. Go to our website, sign up for our email. Bye.